my father's generation and even my generation, when I started, it was all about, get a job, stay with that company for the whole time, deal with whatever you deal with and retire from it. Well, that world doesn't exist anymore. We know that.
How do you make sure that somebody really is authentic and don't just tell you what you want to hear?
Most people will try to do in an interview situation, tell us what we want to hear. I don't think there's any sort of secrets process or something that's a magic bullet there. I think you really have to, it's all about listening. It's about asking.
Welcome listeners, I'm Seb Wichmann, your host of the DoGood Insider, where we dive deep into raw and meaningful conversations with visionary founders, CEOs and CHROs who see beyond profits, elevating the lives of employees and vendors and this beautiful planet we call home. In today's episode, we welcome John Hoey, a leader who is redefining what it means to build a company from the inside out with intention, heart, and purpose. As the CEO of The Y in Central Maryland, a movement dedicated to serving children, John has crafted a culture where every hire decision is a reflection of the mission they serve. He believes that who you bring in is just as important as what you do, and that belief shapes everything from operations to team dynamics. We will explore how John nurtures a workplace culture so meaningful that staff choose purpose over pay, how you lead with clarity without compromising compassion, and how intentional leadership creates long-lasting impact in your organization. If you are a leader wrestling with how to build a values-driven team while navigating real operational challenges, this conversation will hopefully inspire you. Let's dive into the kind of leadership that I believe doesn't just build organizations, but it builds legacies. So welcome, John. Good to have you.
Thanks for having me, Seb. Looking forward to talking to you.
John, when we talked initially, what really struck me was the intention with which you hire at the Y in Central Maryland. And I think that's a conversation that is so valuable as we define culture. And you struck me as somebody who just doesn't compromise your mission in the way you go about hiring. Talk us through your philosophy around this, how you go about it and why.
Well, for me, it really starts with an understanding of the why is really about serving the community, and that our product, if you will, is our people, right? And that people aren't just simply a means to the end. They are the end. They are what people come to experience for us. We can have great buildings and great programs and all of that kind of stuff, but it is really the human engagement at the end of the day that makes the Y different and that makes the Y special. And so we have to build a culture. Culture is not just nice to do for us. It is the essence of who we are. And so making hiring decisions, everything we do around people, well, we are not perfect, and we are just as flawed as the next organization in terms of, we make our mistakes, but we are very intentional. We believe that we're much more interested in who you are as opposed to sort of what you've done. We're more interested in what your values are. We're more interested in whether you care about the community. We feel like we can train you on most anything if you start with the sense of purpose that we look for in people. So that's kind of what we've tried to do.
Yeah, I find that incredible. Can you share with us some more details around, like you talked about kind of that you really focus on the values of somebody, right? We hear a lot about hiring for culture, but I think the way you go about it is much more intentional. It goes a step further, where it almost seems you have this personal, meaningful conversation with a new hire where you say, look, who are you? And let me introduce to you who we are. And if there's a match, great. And if not, I love you and I send you off, so to speak. Give us some more specificity of some of the questions, or, how would this interview look like? Or how is the prep phase of how you shortlist and all that?
Well, it's interesting. We, several years ago, really walked away from, in terms of when you try to engage with the why on our website in terms of job opportunities. The typical site has just a list of jobs, just a long list of jobs and requirements and all that kind of stuff. Ours really has a quiz. We really want to know about you. So when you come on our website and you're looking for opportunities, there's a quiz. We ask you about yourself. We ask you what you care about. We ask you what makes you happy, what makes you motivated. Do you enjoy spending time with young people? Do you enjoy spending time with seniors? We serve people at all ages and stages. So we're trying to get at who you are and what makes you tick. We're not asking you, the kind of classic, what jobs have you held and all that kind of stuff. Those things become important at some point. I don't want to say they're not important, but we want to know more about who you are as a human being, what makes you tick. And that's really that screen kind of symbolizes how we approach hiring. So we do have a set of core values that we believe deeply in: caring, honesty, respect, responsibility. But we also talk about 4 core operating principles, which is kind of how we operate. All of our operations, no matter what you do at the Y, are built around these 4 things. So the 4 things are, safety, engagement. We're big on cleanliness. I know that's kind of an old school thing, but to us, we want people to feel like when they come into a Y that it's a place they want to be. And the last one is empathy. Those 4 things are not just things that we put on pieces of paper. We build our interview guides around those operating principles and those values. We really try to get at those things when somebody is proceeding through the process. Everything is built around both the values and the core operating principles to see whether those are the kind of things that people care about. If you don't care about those things, that's fine. As you said, I had this phrase, we'll love you, but we'll miss you. We'll miss you, but we don't, the why is not, we're not an investment bank, and you're not going to come to the Y and make, your life's fortune. You work at the Y because you really want to serve people, because you care about people, because you love seeing people succeed and develop, and you love to engage with people. You love to see people reach their potential, whether it's young kids, teenagers, adults, whomever. And so we have to really, if those things don't really motivate you, then you're not going to do well, and we're not the place for you. So yeah, we do spend a ton of time there. It starts, like, as I said, if you are, poking around our website, it shows up when you meet, when you have an interview. It shows up if you get hired. It's all, the onboarding is all built around that. So it is, we've tried to make it structural, right? I'm a big believer that, you've got to institutionalize things that matter. And so it's built into the whole process. It's built into the hiring process, the onboarding process, the ongoing training process, the kind of stuff that you will learn and about how to do your job. It's all built around those things.
There's so many questions that float in my ether right now. But one question I have for you: when I was younger and wasn't yet a consultant, an entrepreneur, I was an employee, right? I love what I do, always loved human potential. And I became, over the years, learning and development expert. And I had the fortune and opportunity to work with some really extraordinary companies, whatever that means, right? But I remember going into the hiring process and almost just telling them what they wanted to hear. And it sounds like I just wasn't yet able to step into my authenticity, I guess, if this makes sense, and to really speak from the heart. Mm-hmm. And this was a learning for me over the years, right? And it becomes this really bland conversation where you really don't get to see the soul and the person the way you want to see somebody, or the way you need to see somebody, to decide, are we a good match? And also for the person to do the same, right? Yeah. How do you at the Y, I guess, make sure that somebody really is authentic and don't just tell you what you want to hear?
Yeah. And that is, I think, what most people will try to do in an interview situation: tell us what we want to hear. You know, I don't think there's any sort of secrets process that one or something that's a magic bullet there. I think you really have to. It's all about listening. You know, it's about asking open-ended questions. It's about asking people to talk about. I know for me, when I'm hiring more senior level people, I always ask them, "What brings you joy?" I will always ask, you know, tell me about which job or experience in your life brought out the best in you. And those are not kind of questions people are expecting to hear, right? If you walk into a typical job interview, the questions you're expecting to hear about, tell me about what you did in this job, tell me about what you did in that job. You know, it's kind of the almost rote. And to your point, you can kind of have a canned set of responses ready. But I think if you ask people questions they're not expecting to hear, that really speak to motivation, that really speak to who they are as human beings, you're going to get more authentic answers. You know, the person's not, hooked up to a lie detector, right? But my experience is you can generally tell when somebody is speaking authentically or not. I think.
Yeah. You know what comes up for me? Sorry to interrupt here. It also is about how we as hiring professionals conduct the actual interview, right? Like, I just remember some interviews are so bland and so just official. You almost get like this can I be myself type thing. And I do believe that this is very different at the Y. I have been an outdoor facilitator. I used to work with children. I used to run a called Be the Best You Can Be workshop. I love to be of service, and I love children in my way. And, you know, the Y uses certainly more meaning than an investment bank, as you kind of maybe not, I don't know. It seems on paper that way. So it's really all about also how you conduct the interview, you reckon?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is. Yeah. It's about how you approach it. It's are you really listening? Are you sort of giving people an opportunity to talk? And are you asking follow-up questions and not just going down a list of prepared questions? It is, to some degree, I'm not trained as a journalist, but I think, a good journalist, a good interview is like a good journalist, right? They're constantly sort of probing deeper to really get at, in the case of a journalist, the truth. In the case of an interview, the truth about a person, right? And so, I mean, for me personally, I've never had any set of interview questions in front of me. And I spent the first half of my career in the private sector, and I've hired a lot of people over time. I've hired a lot of, and I've never had a set of questions in front of me. I've been given interview guides, and I tossed them in the trash can. Because I really, I approach it, and I encourage our recruiting team to approach it as journalists, as people who are really trying to understand, as I said, the truth about a human being. And if you do that, and you do things to make the person relaxed, I think people generally start to open up. Again, the good news is, at the Y, I believe, and I think our employees would say this, most of our jobs are, a lot of them are very hard, but I think in general, most of them bring people joy. And so, in a sense, we may have an advantage there. And we're certainly not the only organization. But I have found, again, I've worked in multiple industries in the private sector, including banking. So I don't want it to sound like I'm anti-banking. So I did my time and enjoyed it. But I mean, I have found that if the most successful employees are people who truly love their work, right? You're going to be good. You're going to be better at it if you love it. And well, look, there's many jobs in this world that are really tough to love, understandably. But I think if you're fortunate enough to be able to run an organization where the roles involve things that are helping human beings, you should be able to get at understanding what motivates people and whether the kind of things that are going to lead your organization to be successful, and whether they're truly going to be happy. I don't want anyone at the Y who's not happy. I really, I just don't, because that's going to show up, right? It's very hard to mask. And certainly, again, I don't want to claim that we've never had people that were, unhappy. That's not true. But I have found those people are largely people that we made a hiring mistake.
Mm-hmm. If we, again, talking about the industry you're in, actually, would you mind just finding a couple of words, what your core products are, your core audience, maybe just to set the frame, and then I want to lead into some other questions, if that's okay with you.
The core audience we're serving?
Yeah, and just the core products as well, like, events you're running and camps and all that.
Well, at the Y, we do a multitude of things. Most people know the Y for our big health and wellness centers, but those are really centers of community. So you become a member. There's a lot of activities for kids, for families, for seniors that help people stay active, that help people stay engaged with one another. There's so we're running a whole set of health and wellness activities, but also programming for families and kids. We're very much engaged in early childhood education. So we're running preschools and Head Start programs. We're running after-school programs in schools. We do mentoring. We do summer camp. You mentioned camp. It's about to start next week for us. We do a lot of youth enrichment work with all ages, particularly tweens and teens. We help young people. We sort of help young people stay focused and motivated in trying to complete their education. So we partner with schools to ensure that kids stay on track academically. So we do a lot of things. We don't do just one thing, and that's. If you're really about building community, building healthy engaged communities, you have to do multiple things. And we do those. So, there's no one singular type of job at the Y.
And your organization that you're leading, I believe, has about 2,500
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
staff. Is that right?
About 2,500 employees. Yep.
Right. So I would love to transition the conversation a little bit into kind of the use case that other CEOs, CHROs, founders are in right now, which may not, what's the industry you would call like health industry, or what's the industry that you define yourself in, I guess?
We're in multiple industries. To some degree, we're certainly in the education space. We are in the health, you want to call it health and wellness space. We're in the youth development arena. I would say those are probably the three
biggest, yeah.
Yeah, that you would sort of associate with a particular industry.
Yeah. So let's think about a use case as in maybe it is, the banking industries, maybe it is, law. It doesn't really matter what industry, telecommunications, it does oil, whatever it is, right? On paper, we would be quick to say that you are better positioned in providing staff with a sense of meaning because your product and service just uses, I guess, the personal touch, whether or not that is through community services, events, education, all of which has this very tangible, looking into somebody's eyes, almost physical piece around making an impact to people, right? It's all about people for you. Now, not every company has the same setup, and in fact, probably not in the majority of companies that are listening here probably don't see themselves in the same situation. It's probably fair to say. But what are those principles? What are those, methods to hiring, kind of aligning personal values and their own mission with the company's mission? What do you think, like going back maybe to the time when you were in banking, I believe you said,
Yes.
What are those things where on paper you would say, it's a pretty boring, I don't know, it's a pretty bland type of industry, but I don't think it has to be that way, right?
No.
I think it is about the intention. What do you think? How can we go about it?
Banking gets a bad rap. I was in multiple industries. So I have to say, I feel every industry, every business I worked for, I've been fortunate in that I've really enjoyed it. I've really been able to work with exceptional people. So I don't really think it matters what industry you're in. I mean, in banking, I worked for Citibank, which is a global bank. I mean, they're some of the brightest people, and they just love. I mean, we're a global enterprise. We were helping to build economies around the world. So you got to really think about what is the big thing that you're trying to do. Again, banks can sound very sort of dour and kind of a necessary evil, but if you think about what you're trying to do, I engage with bankers still, obviously in the work I do, we have bankers, and the best bankers they get joy in helping to build, helping other businesses succeed, right? So you have to find two things, what is the big thing you're trying to do? And again, at Citibank, I mean, I don't even know if it was ever expressed this way, but the way I always felt, and I was very young in my career, was like, it was just so incredible to work for this global financial services institution that was helping to build a global economy, right? Like, that was pretty cool. Not everyone gets to do this, right? I was in the for-profit education space. I helped to build for-profit higher ed institutions. I mean, we were helping people move from the lower middle class to, the middle class and above. So we were, building out a network of universities around the world that most of which were in developing countries. So I really, I think the companies, no matter what industry you're in, you have to understand what is the big idea that you're trying to accomplish, and B, do you have people who are really excited about that? Again, there's obviously in every institution, there's highly technical jobs. But the core, the people that are, particularly the people that are customer facing, and at the Y, 99% of our people are customer facing. Some organizations are not like that, but the people who are customer facing, do they really understand what your big idea is, and do they get joy from what they're doing? And then the people who are not customer facing, do they get joy from serving those people? In my view, we call it shared services, the back office functions. If you want to do one of those roles for us, not only do you have to be a good accountant, but you have to get joy from helping those who are delivering all these services. And if you don't, we're not the place for you.
So here's a thought for you I would love to lay out. You can't attract and have conversation with people and ask them the questions around their personal values and see if it aligns if you're not clear about your own as a company owner or as a founder or CEO or CHRO, right? Now, I believe, and I would love to hear your thoughts on that, John, that even just running this podcast, right? When I go into pre-calls, the reason why I do pre-calls is same. It's almost like it's a decision you're making, right? Because I have so many conversations, John, where I almost feel like I need to ask 2 or 3 times the owner or the founder or the CEO, why do you exist? And what I'm hearing then is this standard statements about what their services are.
Right.
Right? So we are selling X, and that doesn't really, it's not really what I'm looking for. I'm looking for this thing beyond. And then I have to rehash the question, and I still pivot back to this commercial piece, right? So do you think that companies at times, more than others, they're just simply not clear about or haven't really sat down and asked themselves those deeper questions that go beyond just profitability? Is that the reason why some people have the wrong people and why some people in their jobs are not happy because they weren't sold the job that they didn't have the opportunity to really figure out what they wanted to do because the hiring manager wasn't clear about what the company is all about? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen it. Again, I've been fortunate to have a varied career and work around a lot of people and observe a lot of other organizations. And I think if you're not, there's that old phrase, I don't know who really deserves credit for it, but, culture trumps strategy. But if you're not clear what it is that makes your organization unique, if you're not clear how working for your company is a unique experience for people, you're not going to be successful because, I've been around founders and CEOs who are very strong technically, but they viewed their workforce as a commodity, right? We've seen this before. I'm sure have seen it in the work you do. I think if you view your workforce as a commodity, I really don't think you can have sustained success. You might have a great product, right? You may have some success for some short period of time. But if you view your workforce as a commodity, your customers will ultimately see that. And you can't sustain it. I've seen it in so many different industries and so many lines of work. And again, around intensely smart people. And I think sometimes, founders and CEOs who are often extremely bright people, they think it's all about, if I have the best idea, then we will be successful. Well, I would argue having the best idea is hugely important, but that's not how you build a successful company. That may be an element of it. And I don't believe you can have sustained success because people have choices, right? People, and I think particularly younger generations now, they want to have a sense of calling. They really want to have a sense of purpose in their work. My father's generation and even my generation, when I started, it was all about, get a job, stay with that company for the whole time, deal with whatever you deal with and retire from it. Well, that world doesn't exist anymore. We know that. People, and we have a whole generation that has grown up with the notion of community service, that has grown up with in an environment in which their personal satisfaction mattered intensely, right? And so you can ignore all that, but I say you ignore it at your peril. And that's what I've seen, and I think that what we try to understand at the Y, we are a not-for-profit, but we're a large organization that people, even though people may find joy in their work, they have other options. They need to continue to find that joy. You need to continue to understand that people are not commodities. They cannot. They're not going to simply do what they're told. That world is over. In a sense, you want to create a culture where people just know what the right thing is to do, and when they're trusted. I mean, obviously, people need to be trained and they need to be supervised in a positive way. But at the end of the day, I always say, we have every day we have a million different first impressions, and the community is always taking its cues from our workforce. And that's how we're judged. And you want people to have the right instinct. I don't care. I don't care if people make mistakes. We all make mistakes. You have to have a culture where people have to have the right instinct. So if they make mistakes, they're the right mistakes. They're mistakes of done because they're trying to do the right thing. And that's hard to do. I mean, that's a tough thing to do. But if you want to have sustained success, that's the kind of culture you need.
Yeah, thank you so much. Just one last question. What do you think needs to happen here in other industries? What would you not advise, but if you go back in time and you imagine yourself running a successful bank like Citibank, for example, in the US, with a product that is not as customer facing other than maybe customer service, that may be right or may be wrong, but what needs to happen here?
Yeah, I mean, we live in such a competitive world, and certainly, we haven't talked about the fact that, AI can do a lot of roles, right? So, if you are in at all a business or an industry that is serving the public, and I recognize there's some industries that's not the case, but if you are in an industry that is ultimately serving the public, you really have to think about your employees as ambassadors. You really have to, I think you need to focus 80-90% of your time on culture, and strategy's important, but culture is critically important. I think you need to rethink how you look for people, how you do that, how you identify talent, what you do to nurture talent when you find it. It's really, on a macro basis, truthfully, the workforce is shrinking. We have we're in a more competitive environment in terms of the workforce. Now, again, there's other trends occurring. We mentioned AI and other things, which may be a countervailing trend as well. But we're simply in a more competitive environment from attracting and retaining talent. And people have choices, and we have a generation of people who are in the workforce and are entering the workforce who really are looking for a sense of purpose. Like I said, prior generations maybe simply were looking for an opportunity to spend 30, 40 years in one place and get a pension. And there's nothing wrong with that.
That world doesn't exist anymore, does it?
Yeah, but that world doesn't exist. I guess the other thing I would say is, you asked me if I was a CEO of another entity. What you have to understand is the motivation of a CEO, particularly a founder, he or she has to understand your motivations may be different than your workforce. And so you cannot extrapolate to say, why isn't everyone like me? Everyone is not like you. You are kind of unique to some degree. You have to understand that most people are motivated in ways that are different than you are. And that is something I find with certain entrepreneurs and founders is very difficult for them to understand. But again, many, have the ones that are successful, they do a lot of things right, but they do understand that. And I've worked for some of those, and I've seen the evolution, and it's like a light bulb going off at some point.
Yeah, I imagine. Oh, John, thank you so much for this enlightening conversation. I really enjoyed your calm, frank, honest, direct demeanor. Sometimes you get people that struggle a little bit to be vulnerable and be authentic. And I thought really you are a great example of not doing that. And I do believe that we need more leaders like that who are, verbalizing that we're not perfect and we don't always get it right and we have challenges because, like, who doesn't? Come on. It's right. And I would love that, I would genuinely love that there are more leaders like yourself out there that speak from the heart and have the intention in the right space. So thank you so much for your time, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Great to talk to you, Seb. I really enjoyed it.